The VO Meter, measuring your voiceover progress. Whether you're a veteran voice actor, just starting out, or don't even know how to set a level, we're here to help you avoid the pitfalls along your voiceover path to success. The VO Meter is brought to you by Global Voice Acting Academy, JMC Demos, Voice Actor Websites, Quadalgo, Roswell Pro Audio, and Vocal Booth to Go. The VO Meter is produced in part using Source Connect, made by Source-Elements.com. And now, your hosts, Paul Stefano and Sean Daly.
In these modern times, every business needs a website. When you need a website for your voice acting business, there's only one place to go. Like the name says, voiceactorwebsites.com. Their experience in this niche webmaster market gives them the ability to quickly and easily get you from concept to live online in a much shorter time. When you contact voiceactorwebsites.com, their team of experts and designers really get to know you and what your needs are. They work with you to highlight what you do. Then they create an easily navigable website for your potential clients to get the big picture of who you are and how your voice is the one for them. Plus, VoiceActorWebsites.com has other great resources, like their practice script library and other resources to help your voiceover career flourish. Don't try it yourself. Go with the pros. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your VO website shouldn't be a pain in the you-know-what.
How many times has this happened to you? You're listening to the radio when this commercial comes on, not unlike this one, and this guy starts talking, not unlike myself.
Or maybe it's a woman that starts talking, not unlike myself, and you think to yourself, geez, I could do that.
Well, mister, well, missy, you just got one step closer to realizing your dream as a voiceover artist, because now there's Global Voice Acting Academy. All the tools and straight-from-the-hip, honest information you need to get on a fast track to doing this commercial yourself.
Well, not this one exactly.
Classes, private coaching, webinars, home studio setup, marketing and branding help, members-only benefits like workouts, rate and negotiation advice, practice scripts, and more. All without the kind of hype you're listening to right now. Go ahead, take our jobs from us. We dare you.
Speak for yourself, buddy. I like what I do.
And you will too when you're learning your craft at Global Voice Acting Academy. Find us at globalvoiceacademy.com.
Because you like to have fun.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our QUADCAST with our very special guests from the VO Breakfast Show podcast, Mr. Jamie Muffet and Carin Gilfry. We've been trying to plan this for a while, and we're really excited to finally get it going. Oh, Sean's here too, by the way.
By the way,
we're going to talk a little bit about how to do a podcast. It's going to be very meta, and how we came to do our own podcast, and then we might touch on some other topics. But first of all, welcome to Carin and Jamie.
Hello. Thanks for doing this with us. We're very excited about it.
I am an avid listener of your show, and I also appreciate the inordinate amount of times you happen to mention me on the show, which is awesome. So I feel like this is a perfect fit.
Paul.
Well, there is that.
So since this is a quadcast, I'm wondering if, because, our listeners know us and your listeners know you, but I'm wondering if we should just go around the room and introduce ourselves real quick so that everyone on both sides knows who we each are. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Do it. So who are you? Who even are you?
All right. I'm Sean Daly. We jokingly called me Sean every day before we started. But anyways, so I've been doing voiceover for about 12 years, primarily like instructional narration, some audiobooks, but also a cartoon and a video game every now and then. I also work for Global Voice Acting Academy as their membership manager. So that's me in a nutshell. So help, I'm in a nutshell. Paul, you're next.
I'm Paul Stefano, as Jamie would say it. And I'm doing voiceover coming up on 10 years. I do a little bit of everything. I do a lot of audiobooks, coming up on like 150 audiobooks now. And I do a lot of live announcing, where I just saw Carin at One Voice doing a couple of presentations on live announcing, specifically sports. So those are kind of my niches.
I was not live announcing sports. You were live announcing sports.
Correct.
I mean, not at One Voice. There were no sports to live announce at One Voice, but you're on a panel.
Correct.
This year, next time.
Next time, I think we should have maybe a 3-legged race, and you could live announce that.
Actually, we did
Maybe.
live announce the Mario Party. So the
Did you?
Mario Kart Party, we started that a couple
wow.
years ago, having live announcing as it's going, and that's always fun.
That's amazing.
Have like VO volleyball and then just spell it with a capital VO.
Do you have egg and spoon races in America?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
There we go.
Like camps and family fun days.
I just have to say, shout out to Tony Jackson, who is one of the best human beings on the planet and always wows everyone at Mario Kart night with his amazing Toad Mario Kart shenanigans that he does.
Yeah, he did it again. He showed up with the chair decked out like a Mario Kart, and it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Also, I don't know if you heard Tony sing at karaoke night, but he was amazing.
Oh, I missed that.
He did it. He was awesome. He's got a great voice.
Also, while we're just gushing on Tony, he kicked butt in my live announce workout. He was one of the volunteers and nailed that too.
Tony, love for Tony. Amazing. So, yes, I'm Carin Gilfry. I am, I guess I started voice acting in like 2012, I want to say. I do lots of different genres of voiceover. I would say commercial is probably what I do most often. I love video games. I do a ton of corporate work, lots of medical narration, and that's pretty much me. And I'm the vice president of NAVA. Jamie and I run the Vocation Conference, which is coming up in a few weeks. It's a conference dedicated to the business side of voiceover. It's online. It's going to be super fun. And I think that's it.
Hello, my name's Jamie. I am a British chap, and I've been in America since 2009, which is the same year I started voiceover. So I've been doing it about 16 years. I do a bit of everything. Basically, if they want a Brit, I throw my hat in the ring. Primarily commercials, corporate narration, bit of video game, bit of animation, bit of everything. And run the conference with Carin, as she just said. And I also do a lot of podcast production, which is apropos for what we're talking about today.
Podcasts.
Hey.
So there are a ton of voiceover related podcasts now. There are a ton of podcasts in general. Podcasts are one of the most listened to, consumed types of media out there in the world. This was not the case even a decade ago. People were not listening to podcasts the way they are now. But my question to all of you is, why on earth would you want to make a podcast? What is the reason? And is this something that like the everyday voice actor should think about doing, to like further their career or just for fun or something like that? So why would you want to make a podcast?
First of all, no one should do a podcast. We're full.
We're at capacity. Case closed.
Never enough podcasts.
Well, first thing, you have something important to say, or you feel you do. And I'm going to actually counter what I just said, because when Paul approached me to do this podcast over a decade ago, I was like, what the hell do we have to say? Because we were both kind of fresh in this. And then we both kind of realized that was our unique selling point, was the fact that a lot of the podcasts that were currently available were kind of intermediate or more advanced focused, or say like the LA animation crowd, for example. And we understood that that wasn't exactly accessible for everyone. So we're like, all right, we feel like we still have something to offer, and we can give people a really transparent look of what this actually looks like. And we were totally shameless, and we were willing to share the mistakes that we made, as well as the ones that we saw constantly being made by other people. So we just wanted to kind of help people out who are aspiring to do what we were.
And then,
I love that.
To piggyback on that, it's great practice. It's sort of our little secret. I especially had no idea what the hell I was doing the first time we did a podcast. I had only recorded maybe 2 voiceover jobs, and it was really kind of pompous on my part to think I could do a podcast. But what we found was that it was great to get our chops up on any genres we wanted to practice. It's a great way to test out new equipment. In fact, I'm in a booth right now that I have not done a live session in yet, because I just installed it a month ago. And I am testing out the equipment right now. I asked Jamie before we got on how it sounded, because this is the first session I've done with someone on the other end listening. And it's a great way, as you're doing work in your career, to test out new equipment, new software, and practice your skills.
Yeah, trial by pod. Jamie, you do a lot of podcast production, like a lot of stuff. Why do people love the medium of podcasts in general? And can you tell us about some of the other shows that you produce?
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit of podcasting is that it's long form. It gives you the opportunity to tell your story, share your personality, share your interests and passions. And like Paul said, the barrier is pretty low to entry. Even Paul could do it, when he was early on in his job.
Twist that knife. Twist that knife.
I know.
But in all seriousness, I really love podcasting because it's also, from a consumer, it's one of the most accessible types of entertainment because a lot of people consume it while doing something else. So if you have to sit down and read something or watch a video, you have to devote your entire attention to it. But most people in their day have times where they've got their hands busy or they need to look at what they're doing, whether they're cooking or exercising or cutting the grass or whatever it is, and they want something to fill that void. And podcasting is sort of perfect for that, and the fact that it's long form. So, I'm going to preview my presentation at Evocation this year a little bit. I'm a big proponent of building your personal brand, and I think that's going to be an ever more important thing in voiceover as we move forward, because particularly in the era of AI, where there's so much generic voice work out there, actually having an interesting perspective, actually having and sharing your personality is going to be such a valuable tool for your marketing and your branding moving forward. And a podcast is the perfect outlet to do that, where someone can really get to know who you are over a protracted period of time.
I have always loved podcasts. Like, I think probably in college, like in 2003 was the first time that I started listening to a show called This American Life on NPR, which was just a radio show. But now you can listen to it as a podcast as well, which just basically means it's a radio show that you can get on all the podcast platforms. And I just love, I'm a very auditory learner. I'm a very auditory consumer of media. I'm a musician. And so exactly as Jamie said, when you're doing something else like driving in the car or going for a walk or something, and you have something to keep your brain busy and you're learning about new topics and you feel like you are getting to know people through their talking, I think it's just a really awesome, I don't know, thing. The other thing that I think is really interesting is I was listening to, Jamie and I both love this podcast called Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. It's amazing. And he had Gavin Newsom on, and they were kind of talking about like the failings of the Democratic Party in the last election cycle. And what they said was so interesting because they were talking about black box media versus glass box media. And black box media is very curated, right? So like you think about the Kamala Harris campaign and how she only spoke to certain news networks. She only had certain very curated interviews. She only had things out on social media that were, made by her team. Joe Rogan invited her to sit down for an interview, and she told him that he could meet her where she was. They would have approved questions beforehand, and it would only be a certain amount of time. And Joe Rogan said no. You look at the other side, and they are engaging in this kind of glass box media format, which is basically like everything and anything they say and do. All of the interviews are very long form. It's kind of no holds barred. No questions are off the table. And they just talk and talk and talk and talk. And in the course of just talking and talking and talking, they might say wild and outlandish things. But because it is so long form and there's so much content, you almost don't notice it, because within the context of an entire 3-hour long interview, as are sometimes the interviews on the Joe Rogan podcast, so many things are said that anything controversial is kind of like not that big a deal. Whereas if it were just like a 20-minute episode, one awful thing in a 20-minute episode would be crazy, right? And that's not to say that, we don't have to get into politics in general where this is going. But podcast, I think, is a really interesting way to approach this glass box media and give people real insight into what you do, why you do it, how you do it in a really transparent, open, and honest way. And so that's why I really love podcasting.
I don't know if anyone else has had this experience in the room here today, but I find it quite strange, and it's quite fulfilling when you go to an event or something and you meet a bunch of new people. It's kind of weird when they speak to you like they know you because they've listened to your podcast and they, kind of get a sense of who you are as a person. It's that sort of parasocial relationship. And at first it's a little odd, but it's actually quite nice to immediately have that sort of barrier broken down, at least in the one direction anyway.
Yeah. I don't know if you call it pseudo-celebrity, or it's parasocial, like you said. And I think that's something that's really unique about podcasts, this sort of interactivity between the audience and the presenters and stuff like that. And to Carin, to your point, I like this idea of, I don't know if that's quite the analogy you were going for with the black box and the glass box, but podcast can be so authentic, right? I mean, they can be very unpolished. This was largely an impromptu, improvised session between the four of us, and we were like, what are we going to talk about today? But anyways, people love that shit. I mean, people love it when people are unfiltered and when they're oozing with personality and it's not too sterilized versus all sorts of more catered and curated media like audiobooks and film and stuff like that. People feel like they're building friendships or relationships with these people. And it's really hard to have that with any other medium.
Yeah, I completely agree.
My favorite part of the VO Breakfast Show is the intro where I think it's real. You're sometimes planning or building the plane as you're flying it. And it comes 100%.
No, that's 100% real.
And you're coming up with the topics as you're doing the intro.
Yes,
I love that because it makes you both seem so much more personable.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is so the way that and I'm going to talk about the logistics of how to go about recording a podcast and what software you use, how to publish it, et cetera, for anyone who wants to make a podcast. But I want to say that for Jamie and I, the way that we record our podcast is we have a standing appointment on our calendar that is 8 a.m. my time, 11 a.m. Jamie's time on Fridays. And if we ever book something and we can't make it, then we don't do the session then and we'll move it to another day. But for the most part, we show up at that time on Friday. We sometimes have an idea of what we're going to talk about beforehand. Like when we did recently an episode on SAG-AFTRA and FICOR and non-union, and I spent about 2 weeks researching all the things that I wanted to share in that episode. But for the most part, we kind of just pick a topic. We write a few questions on the side. We share them with each other, and then we just have a discussion about it from our own perspectives. And that's how our podcast runs. There isn't a lot of prep. There isn't a ton of research except in very specific cases. And we're really good friends and we have a lot of different insights from different parts of the industry. And so I think it works really well.
How does that work for editing though? I'm curious on the backside because Sean and I started out very much the same way. We would get on and we'd wing it and we'd be like, hey, let's talk about microphones or let's talk about the last conference we went to. And that worked well. Except for on the back end, it made cleanup a lot harder for me because I usually do all the editing and mastering because I'd have to edit out a lot of garbage that was just useless because once we started outlining a little bit more, and we still don't do a complete show rundown like you would for a TV show or a radio drama, but we do have a Google Doc that has the plans, and that has helped me tremendously on the back end. So what are your feelings on that?
I have a problem. I can't control myself in the edit. I have to go through, everything with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm editing breaths. I'm, spacing things out perfectly for timing. And yeah, there's a little editorial in terms of content, but generally speaking, I'd say 95% of what we talk about goes in because at the end of the day, I don't think Cara and I would ever claim that anything we say is like the definitive truth. It's just our
Except for
experience.
Everything that I say.
Well, yeah, half of it is the definitive truth.
One of us can only tell truth.
Particularly the subject of voiceover, it's so dependent on your experience and your interest and your skill and your vocal qualities. So we can only talk about our experience and our perspective. So, what's right and what's wrong in inverted commas. Sometimes I'll say something stupid, or I'll say something that I find irritating in the edit, and I'll be like, well, that's being snipped.
But he never cuts out what I say.
No.
Far too important.
No,
Yeah.
but honestly, we've had a couple episodes that we just thought were dumb and we just never put them out.
Yeah.
Where we just we're talking about, I don't know, nothing. And we did one that was on social media where we did a whole social media episode and we were kind of just meandering around and not really saying anything substantial. And then when Jamie went back and listened to it, he was like, I just can't even get through this episode. And I was like, yep, I felt it when we were doing it. Let's just not do it. And then we re-recorded the social media episode the next week and it was much better. We had another one recently that I don't even know what the topic was, but we were just kind of meandering around and it wasn't very interesting. And so we just didn't put it out.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens. So, Carin, I know you have a couple other questions, but I have one I wanted to throw out there. On speaking of social media, you and Jamie do a great job of soliciting comments and questions from your various audiences to put into the podcast. Sometimes it's from me. And we have
Most of the time it's from you.
That's
It's 90% Paul.
I would agree. Sean and I have tried that and failed miserably most of the time, getting a lot of responses. I'm wondering how you've found success doing that.
Well, grow a Facebook group to a significant size, and then you can ask them. That's generally where we go for questions.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are in our Facebook group. I'm going to look right now. It's several thousand that are in our Vocation Voiceover Facebook group. And that group is, it's 4.8 thousand, so close to 5,000 members. And that group is pretty active. There are people really posting almost every day, interacting with each other almost every day. So it's a group that is on people's feeds in their notifications a lot. So when we post as admins in our Facebook group, I think a lot of people get notifications about it. And then the more activity that is on the post, the more people see it. So we try, whenever we post something that we want a lot of engagement on, to first of all ask the question. Sometimes we'll do a poll, and sometimes we just have people write their comments. But we try to like the comments that people make. We try to answer them in the thread so that the post is just getting a lot of engagement so more people see it. You have to kind of play the algorithm a bit to reach the greatest number of people.
And it really does depend on what you're asking, because, it's got to mean something. The question has got to be personal to, as many people as possible. If you're just asking, what's your favorite microphone? That's not going to elicit a lot. But if it's actually more of an emotional connection or something that actually people have experience with, they're much more likely to want to share their story, I think, or share their opinion.
Yeah. Let's move on to kind of the logistics of creating a podcast if someone out there wanted to do that. So first of all, there are several different kinds of podcasts out there. We do kind of like an open interview style podcast, and I know you guys do as well, where you're just kind of talking to each other. Jamie and I have only ever had one guest on our podcast.
Shout out to Isabella.
Shout out to Isabella. We don't usually have guests. It's just the two of us talking, and that's pretty easy to record. Paul and Sean, how about you guys?
How do we choose the format?
Yeah, how do you choose the format? How do you choose guests?
Well, we've done both, so why don't you touch on how we started and then when we shifted?
Well, the first couple episodes were just showing who we are and what our interests and personalities were and the things that we kind of drawing from personal experiences. And also there was a lot of novelty during that time because we were buying new equipment. We were working with new coaches. We were trying out different things in our studio space. And then we would kind of just keep our pulse on VoiceOver Extra or on the various VO platforms, see who was doing the rounds on VOBS or VO Buzz Weekly and stuff like that. And if they happen to be a personal contact or a voice acting idol of ours, we're like, all right, let's get them on the podcast. And you'd be surprised how many people, celebrities, audio engineers, authors, actors, were willing to be on the show just when you asked. So it was pretty awesome.
We also had a bit of an ulterior motive. I'm going to lift the curtain a little bit and say that when we wanted to
pay no attention to the man behind that curtain.
When we decided to move to an interview format, I started to reach out to people with whom I wanted to work. And it was an easy way to make that happen without, one, paying any money, and 2, taking up any travel time or any expenses that way. So I would reach out to a coach with whom I wanted to work and have them on the podcast, and then several weeks later say, hey, by the way, can we work together on something? And that worked.
Almost be our screening interview. Tell us
Yeah.
why we should hire you.
Same thing with agents, same thing with producers. It's worked remarkably well.
Shh.
Yeah, you can also capitalize on their audience as well when the episode goes live, particularly if you can share some, promo material with them, and then they share it, with their friends and social circle and fan base.
Yeah.
So that's a good way of growing the pod.
And then the real turning point was when we only had like 3 or 4 interviews in, and then for some reason, Simon Vance, so multiple Audie winner, Golden Ear Awards from Audible, narrator of over like 700 to 800 books at that time, reached out to us and said, hey guys, how come you didn't ask me to be on your podcast? And Sean was like, oh my God, what is happening? We finally made it. Simon Vance wants to be on our podcast.
We thought you were above our pay grade, Simon, that's all.
That's awesome.
It's funny how you think that certain guests are going to move the needle, but I produce Backstage's podcast, and
Really? I hadn't heard that.
I mention it here and there. Well, you got a promo, Paul. You know what it's like.
Yes, you do.
And certain guests that you think are going to be like, this is going to be massive and it's going to change everything, never pans out. And then some rando person comes on and they have a really rabid fan base, and that really blows everything up. So you can never really predict it.
That's cool. Since we started making our podcast, actually, I'll say since Jamie had a podcast before we had the VO Breakfast Show, which was called the VO School Podcast, which was awesome. And you can still listen to all the episodes. Basically, Jamie, what was your motivation for making the VO School Podcast in particular?
Well, this was, when was that? Like 10 years ago, something like that, maybe a little less, 9 years ago. There was a big influx of people coming to cash in on people starting out on voiceover and thinking, oh, we can sell them courses and we can sell them this, that, and the other. And, half of these people or 3/4 of these people didn't even have any experience themselves. So, purely out of spite, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast that tries to undercut all these people and just at least share the experience from all of the guests that I bring on. And each episode is going to cover a different subject. So I'm going to have experts in those subjects covering that subject. So there's a baseline of knowledge that hopefully at least the listeners can then go, well, this person has the credentials. They know what they're talking about, to then go to reputable coaches, go to reputable demo producers and website designers and things like that. So they actually had that baseline knowledge. So that was my motivation. Also, speaking to what Paul was saying, I'd been doing it a while, but I wouldn't say I was deeply enmeshed in the industry. So as a sort of secondary benefit, I really got to know a lot of people that way. And people essentially got to know me a little bit too. So there were a lot of benefits that were somewhat unforeseen, but it was spite that really got me in.
Spite.
Righteous spite.
Righteous spite, yes.
I was just talking about that with somebody at One Voice, about you specifically, Jamie, how that attitude, that you landed in the perfect city in America to have that attitude, because I'm from Philadelphia, and I often say my main motivation for doing anything in voiceover is spite.
I feel so at home.
So what I was going to say with that question is that I think that the way that people record podcasts has changed a lot since you started the VO School Podcast, and even since we started the VO Breakfast Show. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about just the logistics for anyone who is thinking of starting a podcast. How do you go about recording it?
I mean, these days with the internet, it makes things a whole lot easier. If you set up Zoom, right, and everyone, is wearing headphones like we're all doing today, and, we're not using Zoom right now, but you can we record our podcast on Zoom, and I think it sounds pretty good. But it's actually much easier than recording in person, because if you record in person and you've both got 2 or 3 or 4 live mics in the room, there's all the spill from each other's mics, you got the environmental issues, all that kind of stuff that you have to deal with in the edit. Whereas really using the power of the internet simplifies all that, so long as everyone's wearing headphones. So the logistics of starting a podcast and connecting with your friends, your peers, people that you admire, it's so easy these days. But when I'm working with other people, I have a sort of go-to document that I'll send. with the basic bullet points of make sure you're in a quiet space, try and connect hardwire rather than Wi-Fi, try and connect on a computer rather than an iPad or a phone, like basic things like that ensure that process is as simple as possible. But if you set up Zoom right and you have it so that everyone's mics are always on and you don't have that weird cutting off of other people's discussion, it can really, really feel natural, particularly when you finesse that in the edit afterwards. So, there's such a low barrier to entry, particularly as everyone's used to using Zoom anyway. So there's not really a learning curve for you or the people that you're recording with.
And just logistically, because I have actually never edited one of our podcasts before.
What's that like?
I just come in and I just say all the things, and then Jamie does all the work.
Sound familiar, Sean?
Yep.
So when you get your audio from Zoom, do you get separate audio channels for each person?
Yeah, you have to set up Zoom so that it makes a different track for each person. It's just a setting. It's really straightforward in the audio settings, either in the Zoom app or I think you can do it on the desktop, like log in through the browser as well. But yeah, it default doesn't set that up. So it's important to go in and check that in the audio settings because that makes your life a lot easier. And the secret sauce for me is using the Adobe Podcast AI special source that can turn kind of crappy sounding audio and make it usable. If your audio is original and it sounds great, that's perfect, wonderful. But if someone's recording with their AirPods in and the mic on the AirPods is always crap, you can work wonders with that Adobe. Or then there are third-party plugins for Pro Tools or Adobe, what's it called? Audition, yeah. That help with that stuff too. But so long as you got the separate splits, you can, some people sound great and you don't have to do anything with it. But the main thing is you don't want someone to sound really, really good and someone to sound really, really crappy. You try and not equalize everyone so it's not at all jarring, because people's ears get used to whatever the quality is. Even if it's a little bit crappy, they'll get used to it. But if you're constantly jumping from good to bad to good to bad, it really accentuates that difference. So, yeah.
And in case anyone was interested, I record everything locally. So even now, we use Source Connect for most of it. And right now we're using Source Nexus, which is their free product. Used to be called Source Connect now. They sort of migrated to a new name. And I record everything into my DAW locally. And then if you're doing that, this is where practicing your voiceover skills as a producer come in handy. You want to try to match levels as much as you can before you start. And we all did this before we started recording this. So it does make your life easier on the back end. Like Jamie said, there are tools that you can use to adjust it, but I always try to adjust levels because we're usually working with people who are in the industry before we start, just so it starts out right.
Ideally, you want it to sound like everyone's in the same room, just hanging out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What I love about Zoom, Jamie, is that we are on camera too. So I feel like I can see your reaction. I can say something that's like absolutely silly, and I can see that you think it's silly. And then we can have we can laugh about it. And
you see my shocked face.
Yes.
Disgusted.
But back to your point, Jamie, there's so many tools available now. I mean, a decade ago when we started this, like I felt like we were jerry-rigging or MacGyvering whatever software was available to make a podcast work. But now there's Badalgo, there's Source Connect, there's Zoom, there's Riverside FM.
Yeah.
It's so many, and they have all sorts of like AI suites and stuff like that can, if you're not familiar with the post-production stuff or you want a sample of what it can sound like, you can experiment with that stuff.
Not to mention equipment. Remember when we first started, Sean? It took me so long to find an interface that would allow me to record the incoming signal from Zoom or Source Connect or anything.
Until like the AGO3 came out from Yamaha, right?
And now the Rode Procaster? What's the mixer called?
With the sound effect buttons on it.
The Rodecaster.
The Rodecaster, yeah. But most importantly, it has a mix minus button. And all you have to do is press that button, and it creates an automatic mix minus, so your remote guests don't hear themselves echoing. And that was a big problem up until they released that product. Now there's some other companies that do the same thing.
What sound effect buttons does
Press
it
a button,
have?
Paul. Press a button.
I don't actually have
You can get like an applause or...
You get applause?
You know, sound pads. You
Yeah.
get like, the
like a
little-
radio
yeah.
DJ, or you have the trombone down. Those type of
Do it
things.
with anything you want. Like I know one podcaster uses
Yeah.
Darth Vader going no whenever they reveal something sad. But anyway,
I was just talking about specifically the
get
mixed
real
mind
creative with
dysfunction.
Well, but that's not as fun as the sound effects.
No, you're right.
So, Paul, you're recording right now, but you've got all the splits as well?
I
You're
have
recording that
I'm
locally?
recording a stereo split, so I have
Oh.
my track separate from the rest of yous, as we say in Philly, and
why youth?
it usually works well enough.
I can say one word in Philly accent.
Which is
It's the hardware store, Lowe's.
very nice.
Add an extra U in there.
Lowe's.
I can teach you if you want to annoy all of your friends.
Yeah, please.
Just run around saying water.
All of my friends.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah. One of them's on the call right now.
Hello, I'm JB's friend.
Nice. Just ask
The other
anyone
one
if
is
they
his
want
wife.
Italian water ice.
His other friend is his wife.
Yeah, and she's from Florida, so it's not going to mean much.
So after you record your podcast and you have this beautiful audio and a great interview and it's funny and it's punchy and it's great, what do you do with it then? Like, how do you get your podcast published?
Well, you need to host it, and a lot of these hosting platforms generate everything that you need, basically. You need to host the audio, and then you need to create essentially an address that all of the podcast platforms use to source that audio. So it's called an RSS feed. So what you do is for Apple Podcasts or for Spotify or for iHeart or Deezer or whatever, any of those platforms, because people use a whole array of them, you send that RSS feed to them, and then once Apple or Spotify has that RSS feed established, every time you upload a new episode to your host, that'll automatically get sent to Apple, to Spotify, everywhere else. So it's the initial connection process can be a little fiddly. They're very specific about like the artwork specs, and you want to set up the frequency of the episodes and all that kind of stuff. And it usually takes 20 minutes or something just for them to approve the whole thing. I literally did this yesterday. And but once it's established, every time you've exported your audio, you just upload it onto the host, you add a title, description, subtitle, everything like that, and you can add custom artwork per episode if you'd like, and then you just press send, or you schedule it for whenever you want it to go out, and then it automatically filters to everyone's devices because it goes through Apple, through Spotify, etc. So it's pretty cool.
And is there a platform you use to do that?
Me personally, I use Acast. I really like it. The only issue I find with Acast is that they have an issue with YouTube. They don't automatically stream it to YouTube because they have an issue with ads and the dynamic ads that they put in there. But otherwise, Acast is great. I love it. It's really, really straightforward. I have used a few others and I find them a bit too fiddly, but for my brain, Acast works well.
And we use
How about you guys?
Podbean. Yeah, we use
Podbean.
Podbean, yeah.
Mostly because I found it first, and I'm just lazy.
And it does work with you too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
does everything we need. I think it's a little more pricey than some of the other ones, but it's not anything we have to really stress about. It's once a year, and it does everything we need.
What is a fee for something like that?
It's like $150 a year.
yeah.
I think.
Oh,
You just-
that's not bad.
I think it started at
Acast is
99,
free.
now it's 150. Is it? Okay.
Free.
Yeah. You can get the pro account, which I got, but it doesn't really give you much more. But you don't.
Do you have a
to pay
limited
for it.
amount of episodes?
Nope.
Wow.
No hosting limit. You can add a bunch of shows to it as well on the one account. So you can have. I've got all of my personal shows, via Breakfast Show, this new Formula One show, all under my one account, and really, really straightforward.
What about sponsors? How does that work? How do you get sponsors? How do you have ads? What do they pay? How does the sponsorship thing work? Because we don't have any sponsors for the VO Breakfast Show. Jamie, I know you have on the VO School podcast at certain points, and then also I'm sure for In the Envelope and all of the other podcasts that you do. But talk to me about sponsors.
Shameless
boy.
solicitation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And I'm giving away all my secrets. But I'm gonna say it anyway.
It's
What the heck?
Glassbox Media. That's what we're.
We do have several
Open and
sponsors.
transparent.
Yeah, this
We
is
do have
real
several
talk.
sponsors, and they have shifted over the years based on people's interest or lack thereof, or changing business needs. But I have used the sponsors to fuel my career in voiceover. So we have a microphone sponsor, and no surprise, I'm using the Roswell Pro Audio microphone that was part of that sponsorship deal right now. We have a booth sponsor, which is Vocal Booth to Go, and I'm sitting in a Vocal Booth to Go booth right now. Previously, we had Studio Bricks as a sponsor, and I had a Studio Bricks in the house. So you see where this is going.
Yeah.
I have reached
So don't
out to
just ask for
companies.
money, folks. Be open to goods and services.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say every sponsor so far has been a barter agreement. Not because I wouldn't have taken cash, but because they were services we were already using or wanted to use. And
It
for
was
that
mutually
reason,
beneficial.
it was mutually beneficial. Yes, exactly.
The key with sponsors is really zeroing in on your audience and then finding the sponsors that are going to really want to reach that audience. Because some of the bigger shows, like, you know, the huge shows that are at the top of the charts, they can get very generic sponsors, right? They can get Bombas or Squarespace or whatever it is, or like Pepsi or whatever, because they're reaching hundreds of thousands of people, and then the money is worth it. Like, they're going to pay thousands of dollars because they're reaching hundreds of thousands or millions of people. But if your audience is 500, 700, 2,000, but they're very, very niche, for Studio Bricks, reaching 750 voice actors every single time is really worth it, because their conversion could be 2 or 3 people, and then they've obviously more than made their money back on that. So, if your audience is very niche, there is extra value rather than going on like a CPM model, which is what the big brands use.
And that was the exact pitch we used reaching out to sponsors. We are very niche. And when we started out, we might have had only 10,000 downloads reaching out to these sponsors. But that was enough for Sennheiser to say, yes, you are your audience is exactly what we need to target. So they were a sponsor for the first 4 years.
That's awesome. What about some of these podcast networks, right? So there's like Pineapple Street Media and Max Fun and like all of these different podcast networks. What if someone has an idea for a podcast that they want to pitch to one of these networks? Do you have any insight in how someone might do that?
I don't have any idea what you're talking about, so
I was
no.
like, I do not, actually.
No.
Yeah.
I'm less familiar with these ones.
Well, yeah, these are sort of
Glassbox.
conglomerations of podcasts, right, that are successful, that are either produced in-house, or they kind of go and curate a bunch of podcasts that can help. Essentially, they help promote each other.
Yeah.
Under the banner of like a broader name. And yeah, I mean, if again, the subject matter makes sense, to go to them, and then you can pitch them and either bring your already produced podcast to them and say, look, do you want to, bring us into the under your wing, and we can also help to promote your shows, and you can help to promote our shows. So long as there's a mutual benefit there, and stylistically it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's just the same as anything else, in sort of cold outreach. Obviously, if you can connect with them, like there are a lot of podcast conferences and in-person events that you can go to. A warm out. No, what's the expression? Cold?
A warm lead?
Warm lead. There we go. Is better than a cold lead. So, in bedding yourself in the community is always going to be valuable, whatever, industry you're in. But, you just got to be strategic, I think. You just got to make sense for the other person. You got to think about what makes sense for the other person rather than what can I get out of it. It's got to make sense.
I have another kind of interesting insight, and that's that I've done a couple audio journalism stories for podcasts, specifically one that is focused on like the medical field. I did an interview with a friend of mine who was an opera singer who had cancer and lost all her hair, and I was just talking with her about performing on stage, in concerts and things, like wearing wigs or not wearing wigs and all of this different stuff. And I produced a little radio story for this show, and they bought it from me, which is really cool. And I think there are opportunities if you are good at that kind of thing, if you like editing. I actually edited the whole segment myself with music, and I did all the mixing and I did all the interview stuff. They gave me a time limit. There was an editor that worked with me to kind of tighten it up a little bit. But that was really fun. And I've done that now, I think 3 times for 3 different little podcasts. And that can be a nice, it doesn't pay a lot. I feel like they paid me like $300 and the amount of work was a lot of work between the interview and the editing and all that stuff. But that's another way to, make a little bit of money. And of course, the more well-known you get in the podcasting space, the more you can earn with your little radio stories.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, pitching to clients you already have. Absolutely. I don't know if I've ever pitched to someone who's been my client, but I've definitely had a client who've been like, oh, I see that because we're connected on LinkedIn, because we're connected on Instagram, whatever, they see that I do podcast production. So then it plants the seed. Oh, maybe we can work with him for a podcast. That's definitely happened for sure. The benefit of, kind of what I was saying before, your personal brand and sharing your story that's where these weird circuitous connections and job offers come from, is just being open.
I want to ask you guys, what is your favorite episode that you've ever recorded of your podcast, or what is your favorite moment from your podcast that you can think of that people should go and check out?
I think probably our mic shootout. That was like all the way in 2019. I think where we kind of took, we went from $100 microphones to $1,200 microphones. And then for me personally, I got to meet one of my favorite actors at the time, a gentleman named Keston John. He actually played Hordak in the 2018 She-Ra show, Princesses of Power. But he was just such a great actor, and he had so much wonderful insight on camera as well as voiceover. I was just thrilled that he was on. I was like, he didn't have to be. I just reached out to him on Facebook. I said, I'm a big fan of your work. I think you got a lot to say, and would you be on the podcast? So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
That's
those
awesome.
are cool from a fanboy perspective. And people will be surprised hearing me say this, but from a serious note, we had 2 episodes I'm really proud of about 5 years ago now, where we tried to tackle diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we had 2 episodes. One was focusing entirely on ancestry and ethnic backgrounds and how that casting needs to be authentic. And the one entirely on lifestyle choices and including as many members of the LGBTQ plus community that we could. And we got a lot of feedback from those, and people were really complimentary on those, and I feel proud of that work.
Bastards.
I know, I really did like the Bastards episode.
That's my answer.
What was that episode about?
It was just people who were bastards.
Metaphorical and literal. We covered the gamut,
Just people who were bad people in the industry.
Yeah.
My favorite, I think, still is Falco Scrabble. And that is, Jamie and I did an episode on demos where we played our old demos, like our first demos ever, which we both self-produced, and they were both just horrendous. And Jamie, in his demo, he, for some reason, decided to play a character, and he said, "Hello, I'm Dr. Falco Scrabble." and he went on to talk about something medical related.
Yeah.
I think I didn't even know,
I maintain this is a real person because I seem to remember that I pulled a book off the shelf just for some copy and opened it up, and there he was. And
wow.
I just was, okay,
I thought it was
that
like
name
a
will
Star
do.
Fox reference or something.
So I can't tell you exactly who he is, where he comes from, but I have tried to Google it.
I'm looking right now. I don't see any
No.
Falco Scrabble at all.
Just because he's not on the internet doesn't mean he's not real.
Yes, it does. That's exactly what it means.
He was in the book.
He was in a book. He must be real.
Or he's been
because
scrubbed off the internet.
scrabbled off the internet.
He sounds like he'd also be like a League One keeper.
Could well be.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was my favorite, I think. I also I really am proud of the SAG-AFTRA episode that we did. I had a bunch and that was just a couple weeks ago. I had a bunch of like super union people who are very knowledgeable about union matters reach out to me and say that it was very accurate, very helpful, and that they were really appreciative that we laid out all the facts wherever we could find them. So that was, I'm happy about that one as well.
I really like that one because you did all the heavy lifting and I just basically didn't do anything.
Well, in your defense, you do all the editing of the podcast.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
You do a lot of heavy lifting outside of everything.
Although now I hear that you can edit podcasts because you pitched it, I'm wondering why I'm doing all the work.
Yeah.
Although my control freak nature is very happy that I do the editing.
Yeah, no, you're better at the editing than I am. Let's not change that.
Can I throw out a question? It's a bit of a ethic dilemma, but as you've garnered more content, or Jamie, if you're thinking back to the VO School podcast, do you ever get the urge to go back and edit content that has now become either controversial or just flat out wrong? Like maybe there's a bad actor you didn't know about then, but now you do, or a company that has done horrible things that was a sponsor that you think you should no longer be associated with. Do you ever get the urge to go back and re-edit, or do you think the past is the past?
I have deleted episodes.
There you go.
Rather than re-edit things, I've just deleted the episode, or I made it unavailable. I've deleted episodes and gotten rid of, the whole thing, rather than going in and re-editing everything. I never listen back to stuff, but if I hear of someone that's done something that I don't like, that's the only sort of revision that I do. I don't know.
I think that's a good policy because, the internet's attention span is short, but its memory is long. So probably safest that way.
Yeah.
I don't edit any of the podcasts, so.
I have had one instance, actually.
I'm indifferent.
I've had an instance where a couple of people fell out big time, and the other one wanted the podcast deleted.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
So I had to go in and get rid of that episode because they had a major falling out, and I was like, oh, yucks.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It was quite funny.
Just kind of take those things as they come, I guess.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen with that kind of thing.
It's true. So what are you guys working on coming up with your podcast? Anything exciting? Anything coming on the horizon?
No,
you're not. You're going to stop making episodes. Everything's done.
It's the final episode. Goodbye, everybody.
Actually, that's not true. We are efforting to schedule Jim Edgar, who is a voice actor and tech guru out in the San Francisco Bay Area. So he's next up on the docket, and then we're chasing Rolf Veldman from Voice 123.
Oh, we love Rolf.
Yeah. We were supposed to have him on a couple of months ago, but he's had a series of personal events that precluded him from coming on. So we're still working to get him scheduled as well. And those will be our 2 upcoming episodes.
Amazing. Jamie, what do we have coming up?
Well, funny you should mention that. We have Evocation, which is our virtual conference. So it's kind of like a podcast that you attend live and all the other stuff.
When is that? Why don't you promote it? Yes, there you go.
It is September 19th to 21st, and you can get tickets now. I don't know when this episode is going out, but the tickets will be available right up to the start of the event, but you should try and get your tickets soon because we mail out a swag bag. So you get
like a physical one, not an email. Like you really get a thing in the mail from us.
Yeah, a little thing actually in your mailbox. But we need to obviously send that out in advance of the conference. So try and get that in, early September at the very latest, because we'll get those out to you.
And then you have another event coming up in the spring, correct?
Yes. We have our destination conference, which is Vocation Curacao. And we have not released yet the names of all of our speakers, but oh my gosh, it is people that I have been trying to get to come out to a conference for some of them literally 4 years.
Yeah.
And they're coming. And I'm very, very excited. Our keynote speaker is JP Karliak, who this summer was both of the villains in the new Smurfs movie that came out. He also plays Green Goblin on Spidey and His Amazing Friends and Morph in X-Men 97. And yeah, JP's just an awesome, awesome person. And I'm excited about that. We've announced JP so far already, but everyone else will probably announce at Evocation, I think.
Yeah, and all that information is available on our website, vocationconference.com.
Oh, and it's in Curacao. Did I say that?
Yeah,
you did.
Caribbean island, gorgeous place, all-inclusive resort. Amazing
Has
time.
a liqueur named after it.
Yes, it does. A blue liqueur.
It's the C in the ABC Islands, right? Aruba.
Yes.
What's the B?
Barbados?
No, it's not Barbados.
No. This is going to be your editing.
No rush. We'll just wait.
Bonaire.
Bonaire. Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's Bonaire. Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. And they're Dutch-owned islands.
Jamie and Carin, thank you so much for being on this Quadcast with us. It was so much fun talking.
Oh,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Wow, that was really well done.
Podcast
What was your name again?
professionals.
What were your names again?
You want to add anything or want me to try and do it?
This is how you're supposed to do it, folks.
This is how to wrap it up. All right, guys, we are very excited. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Wait, what are the names of our podcasts so people can follow us?
All right.
Yeah.
VO Breakfast Show and the VO Meter. Go watch them. Go listen to them on whatever podcasts are found.
Love it.
That was really well done. Good job.
Walgreens, because it's flu season, and you live in a place with doorknobs and handrails and, people.
We tried booking a vacation rental on one of those other websites. They don't always tell you everything.
The stars take it to the red carpet.
We are back live from the red carpet. California leads the way for change in America, and so does Kamala Harris.
Rated M for mature. Claire Redfield.
And who exactly are you?
So, yeah, what hashtag should I use to describe a grown man in a tuxedo wrestling a goat?
And prior to 1933, many of them belonged to a variety of political parties that were now outlawed in Germany.
This is the story of how Q got curly. Quinn was crazy about curls. Curly fries, curly straws, curly-haired dogs.
Hey, Jay Michael here. Thanks for listening to the VO Meter podcast. It's one of my favorites. If you're looking for a great demo like the ones you just heard, check out jmcdemos.com for more information.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the VO Meter. To follow along, visit us at www.vometer.com.
We'd also love to hear your comments or suggestions for the show. Or if you have a questionable gear purchase, tell us all about it on our Facebook page or on Twitter @the VO Meter.